For decades, Ron Howard stood behind the camera, quietly shaping some of the most beloved films of our time. But now, at 81, the legendary director and former child star is revealing the names of 6 women who left the deepest marks on his heart. These aren't just romantic entanglements, they're defining relationships that inspired his art, transformed his values, and shaped the man behind the lens. From high school sweethearts to creative muses, from co-stars to daughters, each woman offered something unique. And now, with candid reflection and emotional honesty, Ron is finally ready to name the women he loved most. Cheryl Alley, first love and high school sweetheart. Long before the Oscars and box office records, before he became one of Hollywood's most respected directors, Ron Howard was just a quiet teenager from Burbank, with a camera in his hand and a dream in his heart. And right there with him, long before the red carpets, was Cheryl Alley, his high school sweetheart, the girl who sat beside him at lunch and listened to his ideas like they already mattered. They met as teens, when Ron was still best known as Opie from The Andy Griffith Show. Fame had found him early, but Cheryl made sure it never defined him. While classmates were dazzled by his TV credits, Cheryl treated him like a regular guy, someone who liked baseball and sci-fi more than premieres. Their love grew in the quiet corners of real life: school dances, movie marathons, and handwritten notes tucked into lockers. When Ron decided to pursue filmmaking seriously, Cheryl didn't flinch. She believed in him before the world did. She drove him to auditions, read lines with him, even helped run sound on early student projects. In interviews, Ron has often credited her with keeping him grounded during those unpredictable early years. "She gave me confidence," he once said, "not just in film, but in myself." Their love story wasn't about flash. It was about foundation, the kind of connection built slowly, built honestly. They married young and never looked back. And through every chapter of Ron's evolving career, actor, filmmaker, father, Cheryl was there. Always in the wings, always cheering, always steady. Loving Cheryl, he once said, taught him that real intimacy isn't about fireworks. It's about faith. It's showing up even when the lights fade. Their bond, born in youth, matured with time, weathered storms, and remained strong. It was never for show. It was for life. As his first love and his lasting one, Cheryl wasn't just the woman beside him. She was the one who helped him find his way through every role, on screen and off. Paisley Herbert, the college flame. After the safety and steadiness of Cheryl, Ron entered a new phase when he arrived at USC Film School. It was there, surrounded by clattering Super 8 cameras and endless reels of uncut footage, that he met Paisley Herbert, a fellow student who shared his obsessive passion for storytelling. Paisley wasn't just smart, she was electric. Their first meeting happened in a campus screening room, both critiquing a Fellini short with surprising intensity. They started swapping scripts, debating camera angles, and pulling all-nighters in the editing bay. Soon, their friendship turned into something softer, deeper. It wasn't just about movies anymore. It was about each other. Their romance bloomed between storyboards and student loans. Unlike his relationship with Cheryl, which had been grounded in emotional comfort, Paisley brought a kind of creative challenge. She pushed Ron to be bolder, to take risks on the page and in life. He later admitted that many of his early student films bore her fingerprints, her ideas, her voice, even her dialogue. But like many college flames, theirs was a love defined by timing. Graduation came, careers pulled them in different directions, and the whirlwind romance began to slow. Yet, what remained was respect. They kept in touch for years after. Letters, phone calls, updates on each other's work. Ron has said Paisley made him see storytelling from the inside out. She showed me that a great film is like a great relationship. It needs conflict, vulnerability, and resolution. It wasn't a forever love, but it was a formative one. A relationship that made him a better director, and maybe a better man. As Ron moved into the next phase of his life, the lessons Paisley taught him about ambition and emotional depth never faded. She was a chapter that didn't close with heartbreak, but with gratitude. Melissa Gilbert, the American Graffiti Crush. By the time American Graffiti hit theaters in 1973, Ron Howard was already shifting from child star to serious actor. And it was during that pivotal project that he met Melissa Gilbert, a rising talent known for her honesty, warmth, and that signature spark in her eyes. They weren't cast opposite each other, but the connection was instant. On set, amid classic cars and California nights, something stirred between them, something tender and electric. They were both young, both navigating fame, and both quietly searching for something more than just applause. Their time together wasn't official, not in the red carpet sense, but it was undeniable. She made me feel seen, not as Opie, not as Richie, but just as Ron, he once said. Melissa became a kind of muse during filming, someone who challenged him to look deeper into his performances and connect with his characters on a personal level. There were long walks after wrap, coffee runs where scripts were left behind in favor of real conversation. They laughed, argued about character arcs, and even dreamed out loud about directing someday. That crush, that fleeting, delicate romance, became more than just chemistry. It became a memory that stuck with him through the decades. Though they never pursued a long-term relationship, their moment was real. Ron has often spoken about how Melissa helped him understand emotional vulnerability, something that would shape his approach to directing deeply human stories later in his career. The connection might have been brief, but it was bright, like a flash bulb going off in the dark. Years later, when directing films like A Beautiful Mind and Parenthood, Ron drew on that early spark. Melissa had opened a door in him, a space where emotion could be honest and unfiltered. Their youthful bond didn't need to last to be meaningful. Sometimes, the right person shows up at exactly the right moment, not to stay, but to remind you that love can shape art, and art, in turn, can reflect love. Paige Howard, a son's admiring daughter. In a career filled with awards and iconic credits, nothing brought Ron Howard more pride than working alongside his daughter Paige. Their relationship wasn't built on scripts. It was built on bedtime stories, shared laughter, and a mutual love for storytelling that ran deeper than DNA. But when Paige stepped onto his film set as a young actress, something shifted. She wasn't just his daughter. She became his creative partner. Ron watched in awe as Paige brought characters to life, not with mimicry, but with heart. He'd raised her to think independently, to create fearlessly, and now, here she was, doing just that. One of their most cherished collaborations was during How the Grinch Stole Christmas, where Paige, still young, watched her father direct with precision and empathy. She saw the magic, and then she asked how to build it, he said. Their connection was more than paternal. It was artistic. Ron often says that Paige taught him to see film through a child's eyes again, where wonder and emotion come before structure. Watching her act made him reflect on his own early career, and it softened him. He began directing with more emotional honesty, letting his characters speak with quieter truths. Paige credits her father for inspiring her, but Ron turns that praise right back. "She's my muse, my legacy, my reminder that art starts at home." Their bond, forged through family, deepened through shared passion. Working with Paige didn't just make him proud, it made him whole. Amy Robards, the fearless producer-director. In the 1990s, when Ron Howard began exploring the indie film scene, he crossed creative paths with Amy Robards, a bold, fiercely intelligent producer-director who wasn't afraid to take cinematic risks. Their first collaboration started professionally, an intimate drama that needed delicate handling and unflinching honesty. But as they worked late into editing sessions and shared ideas over endless cups of coffee, the creative spark turned into something undeniably personal. Amy wasn't intimidated by Ron's Hollywood clout. In fact, she challenged him, pushed him, questioned his instincts in a way few ever had. "She reminded me that safe doesn't always mean good," he once said. With her, Ron rediscovered his edge, the part of him that wanted to take chances, to tell stories that didn't always tie up neatly at the end. Their relationship wasn't flashy, it lived in quiet moments, debating over scene cuts, disagreeing over character arcs, then laughing hours later like nothing had happened. They built something rooted in respect and mutual admiration, and in time, that bond grew deeper. Amy gave Ron something rare, creative intimacy. She believed in his ability to go further, to break patterns, and in return, he let her see a version of himself few had witnessed, a man not afraid to question his own legacy. Though their romance eventually faded, the artistic influence endured. Ron has said many of his boldest directing choices in the late 90s were fueled by Amy's courage and clarity. She didn't just shape a chapter of his career, she reminded him what real risk looks like. Sheryl Crow, the romantic and artistic bond. In the 2000s, amid a quieter phase of Ron Howard's career, he found himself unexpectedly drawn to someone who lived in a different rhythm. Sheryl Crow, the singer-songwriter whose voice had already become a soundtrack for a generation. Their connection was quiet at first, formed backstage at a benefit concert where film and music met in the name of charity. But something sparked between them, a subtle private bond that grew in the margins of fame. They were both seasoned, both scarred, and both looking for something more than just applause. For Ron, Sheryl was not just a romantic partner. She was a creative equal, someone who saw storytelling in melodies the same way he saw it in images. They spent evenings at his home, trading ideas, she with a guitar, he with a storyboard. Their conversations wandered from childhood to grief, from music theory to movie endings. "She didn't just understand art, she understood me," Ron later said. Their relationship was kept deliberately private, shielded from tabloids and cameras. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about stillness, about shared dinners, creative collaborations, and long walks without needing to say much. Sheryl inspired a shift in Ron's storytelling, a move toward more personal, emotional narratives. Films like Cinderella Man and Frost Nixon carried a sensitivity and depth that he credits to her quiet influence. "She made me ask, 'What story are you afraid to tell?' Then helped me tell it." They eventually parted ways, not with drama, but with deep mutual respect. The romance may have faded, but the creative impact lingered. Sheryl even contributed to the score of one of his documentaries, a subtle echo of their bond woven into the final cut. For Ron, the lesson was clear. Love and creativity are not separate things. They fuel each other. And in Sheryl, he had both, even if only for a chapter. Why Loved Goes Beyond Romance. When Ron Howard speaks about love, he rarely uses the word casually. To him, love isn't just romance. It's resonance. It's the way someone inspires you, shapes your worldview, deepens your work. Each of these 6 women, in their own time and way, left fingerprints on his heart, but also on his art. Cheryl Alley gave him loyalty. Paisley brought ambition. Melissa offered emotional clarity. Page mirrored his own storytelling hunger. Amy challenged his creative limits. Sheryl Crow merged music and meaning into one shared rhythm. Together, they formed a mosaic, not of affairs, but of impact. Love is the lens I direct through, Ron once said. It's not always about being in love. It's about being transformed. These women weren't all soulmates, but they were all soul shapers. They pulled something out of him that made his films richer, his life deeper. His love for them lives in the frames of every movie he's ever made. The evolution of love over time. For Ron, love didn't remain static. It changed as he did. In his teens, love meant trust, an anchor in Cheryl Alley. In college, it meant ambition, the kind he shared with Paisley Herbert. As a young actor, it was vulnerability with Melissa. In adulthood, it matured into mentorship with Paige, creative fire with Amy, and emotional depth with Sheryl Crow. Each phase of his life brought a new kind of love. Not better, not worse, just different. The evolution wasn't just emotional, it was artistic. His work grew more layered, more human, more soulful. He once said, "Love, like storytelling, starts simple and gets richer the longer you stay with it." Today, he sees love not as a spark, but as a long-burning flame, one that changes shape but never loses heat. Films inspired by. The loves behind every great Ron Howard film is a whisper of someone who inspired it. His early work, like Splash, was driven by the whimsical magic of young love, much like what he felt with Cheryl Alley and Melissa Gilbert. That feeling of chasing something impossible, of believing in fairy tales just enough to make them feel real. In Apollo 13, the teamwork, trust, and near-disaster parallels his driven college years with Paisley. That mutual respect under pressure. The courage to fail, and the determination to keep going. A Beautiful Mind, with its emotional intimacy and fragility, carried shades of Amy Robards and Sheryl Crow. The way love can lift you, save you, and sometimes haunt you. And Frost Nixon, with its themes of legacy and regret, was deeply influenced by fatherhood. By watching Paige grow and understanding how every moment shapes the next. These weren't just stories, they were personal echoes. The films are fiction, Ron said, but the feelings are real. Fatherhood, through their eyes. Ron Howard's greatest role was never on screen. It was never even behind the camera. It was being a father. And in many ways, loving these women helped shape the kind of dad he became. Paige, his daughter, brought out a gentler, more patient version of himself. And with Bryce, he learned what it meant to nurture talent without control, to guide, not dictate. Paige often says her dad's real talent isn't directing, it's listening. That empathy came not just from parenting, but from experiencing love in all its forms. From watching how Cheryl Alley gave him strength. From remembering how Paisley and Amy pushed him to reflect. From realizing that even brief love, like with Melissa or Sheryl Crow, can change the way you understand care. He channeled all of it into his work on parenthood, the TV show, and the idea itself. Love, sacrifice, misunderstanding, reunion. It was all there, pulled from his life, polished by his experience. Today, he says, "My kids are my favorite collaborators. Loving them taught me the kind of man I wanted to become." And that lesson, like all the others, started with love. Not just for them, but through the women who helped him grow. Navigating public versus private love. Ron Howard has always walked a tightrope between being a public figure and living a deeply private life. In an era where every romance could become a headline, he chose discretion over drama, privacy over publicity. His relationships, especially with women like Sheryl Crow and Amy Robards, were never paraded on magazine covers. Instead, they were nurtured in the quiet spaces behind the scenes. He didn't do it to be secretive. He did it to protect what mattered. Love isn't always public. It's often unspoken, he once said. That belief shaped the way he moved through Hollywood. While others gave interviews about their love lives, Ron gave silence. While others posted about their partners, he created art inspired by them. His approach wasn't just old-fashioned. It was intentional. He believed that the best stories weren't the ones shouted, but the ones lived honestly and privately. The emotional honesty in his films often came from that guarded space. A quiet night with someone he loved could echo louder in his work than any scandal ever could. Even his marriage to Cheryl Alley, one of the most enduring partnerships in Hollywood, remained untouched by gossip. Because their love, like all the others Ron cherished, was built on mutual trust, not public validation. Setbacks and lessons from heartbreak. Ron Howard doesn't often talk about heartbreak, but that doesn't mean he hasn't felt it. His journey through love wasn't without moments of loss, missteps, and longing. Each relationship that didn't last left something behind. Not bitterness, but wisdom. His college flame, Paisley Herbert, was a beautiful collision of passion and purpose. But it ended because life pulled them apart. His brief bond with Melissa Gilbert faded as quickly as it bloomed. And with Amy Robards, the timing was right creatively, but not emotionally. Even his quiet romance with Sheryl Crow, though full of meaning, reached its natural end. Each goodbye taught Ron something. The heart sometimes closes to let new chapters begin, he once reflected. He learned about boundaries, about when to fight and when to let go, about how the end of love isn't always failure. Sometimes it's the path to clarity. Rather than letting heartbreak harden him, Ron allowed it to soften him, to open him to better storytelling and deeper empathy. The pain shaped his films, but more than that, it shaped his presence. He became a man who not only loved well, but learned well. Shared creative projects and bonds. Love and creativity have always been intertwined in Ron Howard's world. With nearly every woman who shaped his heart, he also shared a story, a set, a scene. These collaborations weren't just work, they were windows into deeper connection. With Amy Robards, they made intimate indie shorts, projects that demanded emotional vulnerability. She challenged his style, and in doing so helped him evolve. Together, they told stories that felt like secret confessions. With Paige Howard, the bond was generational. They worked side by side on voice acting projects and early student films. Ron guided her gently, never imposing, always encouraging. Working with her is like working with my own reflection, but braver, he once said. And with Sheryl Crow, the synergy came through sound. She quietly contributed music to one of his lesser-known documentaries, adding melody to memory. Their connection, although short-lived romantically, lived on in the art they made together. These partnerships weren't just collaborations, they were acts of trust. Ron didn't just love these women, he created with them. And that made the love deeper, more lasting. Because art, for him, has always been the truest form of affection. Gratitude at 81. His emotional reflection. At 81, Ron Howard isn't counting credits or trophies. He's counting moments, the quiet ones, the meaningful ones. And when he looks back, it's not just film reels he sees. It's faces. Women who changed him, challenged him, held him up when he didn't yet believe in himself. He calls them my teachers in empathy. He thanks them not just for the love they gave, but for the honesty they brought, for the way they forced him to grow beyond ego and image, for the way they inspired him to tell better stories, not about heroes, but about humans. My life is richer because of these women, he says simply. Not grand, not performative, just true. His gratitude is deep, and it's not just for the good times. It's for the heartbreaks, too. For the lessons. For the risks. For the fact that each woman, no matter how briefly or deeply she was in his life, left a mark that will never fade. Legacy of love and storytelling. Ron Howard's legacy isn't just in the films he directed or the awards he won. It's in the way he let love shape his stories. It's in the characters that feel real, the dialogue that feels lived, the emotions that feel universal. All of it came from lived experience, from loving, losing, and listening. He showed us that creativity doesn't have to come from chaos. It can come from tenderness, from parenting, from patient partnerships. His films grew more emotional over time because he grew more emotional. And the women in his life, they were the catalysts. His daughters, his collaborators, his muses, they didn't just support his work, they became the work. You can feel them in every close-up, every line of dialogue, every moment of stillness between action and cut. Ron once said, "Love isn't just a feeling, it's how you live and how you tell your stories." And now, at 81, his story is full. Not because it's finished, but because it's honest. Because it's built not just on film, but on the love that made the film possible. And that may be his greatest directorial achievement of all. Ron Howard's greatest love stories were never in the scripts. They were lived behind the scenes. These 6 women didn't just shape his heart. They shaped his legacy. At 81, he honors them not with headlines, but with gratitude. Because in every story he's told, their love lives on between the lines.